Hey guys, welcome to the Power to You podcast. Today I'm joined by David and Elle Amrein. Amrein, am I saying that right?
Yeah.
All right, perfect. And you are the manager of Practice Without Pressure at the MAC, attached to Morgan's Wonderland.
That's right, in San Antonio.
That is amazing. We were there when Morgan's Wonderland first opened. And for those that don't know, Morgan's Wonderland is the ultra accessible theme park. And Gordon Hartman, who his daughter Morgan, love of his life, lover of butterflies, they together built this amazing theme park in her image, in her honor. And she's the ambassador. We run into her all the time, but they're always doing amazing work. And the accessibility of every ride, they can put a whole wheelchair on a big boat swing, like
That's right.
It was where everybody was considered, and there's not situations where they have to tell people no. What has it been like for you? You've been with the organization how long?
So since November, so I'm coming up on 6 months here in May.
Did you have any connection to Morgan's prior?
So we actually, our family moved to Texas from California this past summer. So in July 2024.
Whereabouts?
We were in San Diego.
Okay, cool. I'm from Long Beach myself.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, not far. Yeah.
Yeah, another fellow Southern Californian transplant, right? Yeah. So honestly, we moved because Elle's mom got an awesome job here, and we had no idea what to expect about what resources there might be in San Antonio for individuals with disabilities. And when it became a reality, we were moving here, we just started Googling and realized that we hit the jackpot that San Antonio
It's not even close. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many resources here. We thought we had it good in California, but there are many more resources here. I do think that Texas probably struggles with state funding a little bit. Like we're going to be waiting 15 to 20 years for some of our waiver programs and things. But by the same token, there's just so many programs. We have Morgan's Wonderland and all the other Morgan's entities, including the MAC that I work at now. We just went last weekend to Camp, which is in the
I've been seeing the videos. Yeah,
outskirts of San Antonio, a summer camp for individuals that are disabled with special needs, and it was awesome. And you're going to go to summer camp there this summer. We've done Kinetic Kids. There's a lot of things in San Antonio. So we Googled it. We found that the MAC, which stands for Multi-Assistance Center.
Yeah, tell me more about the MAC.
Yeah. So the Morgan's Wonderland that you were talking about earlier is celebrating its 15-year anniversary. So it's been open since 2010. I believe I have my date right, in San Antonio. And they've added different other Morgan's entities since then, including Morgan's Own Camp. There's a sports program. And about 2.5 years ago in 2022, they opened the Multi-Assistance Center, and which is where we are now. And this building houses all sorts of different organizations targeted at this population, from medical offices to dental offices to even personal care facilities like Morgan's Salon, where you got the tinsel that's in your hair right now, and you get your hair cut about every month or two.
I like it. It looks great.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
There's a cafe downstairs. It's a place for all sorts of resources to be housed under one roof. And then all the members of the MAC have a navigator assigned to them who helps us figure out kind of the world of being a family with an individual with disabilities in the family, and how we navigate San Antonio, how we navigate the resources both inside the MAC and outside the MAC. So we got involved with that almost as soon as we moved here. And I just thought it was such a cool organization that I started searching their website for jobs. And in October, interviewed to become the manager of the Practice Without Pressure program, and then started working in November. All I knew about that before I started interviewing was that Practice Without Pressure is a facility and a program designed for individuals with special needs and disabilities to practice, certain medical, dental, or personal care procedures that maybe they struggle with And I've learned a lot more since then.
Yeah, I love the joining of the Practice Without Pressure mission with everything that Morgan's the whole Morgan's organization, because at 10, 15 years ago it was the Gordon Hartman Family Foundation and it was Morgan's Wonderland, and it has blown up since then to so many more things, and now they're just Morgan's because it is so many different solutions and things. So I love that Practice Without Pressure is here and that you guys are doing this work. It is. We talk to parents a lot, and we interview parents. We've been in the home. We've had them come to the studio, and the peace of mind of having, and I think that's where Practice Without Pressure was born, was out of that frustration of if you want to receive basic care, critical care, even, it's going to involve restraint. It's going to involve sedation, and that experience is rarely a positive one. And so being able to provide that here and having a place where people can go is just phenomenal. We've bumped into practice specialists even just setting up today, and it's so great that our very first exposure to Practice Without Pressure was also in this building when they taught the first big course group that then became the e-learning course. And so it's been really cool to see it evolve from Morgan's Wonderland in general to then where PWP kind of felt the siren's call to come here and develop that. Yeah.
It seems like a really awesome fit for Morgan's, because so many of the folks who are members at Morgan's Mac have history of either being restrained, as you say, for maybe a medical procedure or a dental procedure, including my daughter here, which we'll talk about more in a minute. I am happy to be completely transparent about that. Excuse me. And I want you to give us some perspective too, but also sedation, right? Folks who, like Elle has had to be sedated for most of her dental exams every couple years. Yeah. And you're showing me where you get an IV in your arm. Yeah. Do you like it when you get that IV in your arm? No. Yeah. How come you don't like it? Yeah. But you know what? You just started practicing. So the recent news for our family, because I've been here for almost 6 months now, learning about this program and starting to take on the helm of what the PWP at Morgan's Mac is. But Elle just a month ago started practicing for vaccination. So she is currently practicing how to be brave about a shot so that she can do her next vaccine series without being held down, right? Yeah, because that's not fun, right? Yeah. I think our story is like what so many families experience, that, when Elle was a baby, or frankly, when her brother George, who is an individual who's typically developing, right? When they're both young, we hold them on our lap for their shots and we give them a little hug. And it comes from a place of care, and it comes from a place of wanting to reassure and hug. I mean, it feels natural
and shield.
To parent, right?
It's kind of anything that's scary.
Yeah,
we want to shield our children from.
For sure,
absolutely. So, as the manager for Practice Without Pressure here at the Mac, how do you describe PWP to people who have no idea? What is your definition? Putting you on the spot.
I know. So let's see. I try to keep it conversational and not like I'm reading from a script.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah. But I would describe it as it's an opportunity for individuals with disabilities and special needs who might struggle with a particular medical, dental, or personal care procedure to practice that procedure by breaking it down into real small steps that are much more manageable to handle, and through lots of repetition, by empowering the individual to say things like stop. We use a lot of sign language in our family. This is stop, right? By being able to say stop, I need to take a break. This is too much. And then we'll do some breathing and come back to it, right? So by breaking things down, by empowering the individual, building up that confidence that even if you don't like getting a shot or a blood draw or having a dentist look in your mouth or getting your hair cut, that you are, we can help build your confidence so that you are able to participate in your own healthcare, your own dental care, your own personal care. And I would say we do this by treating our individuals with dignity and respect, the dignity and respect that they deserve, but that they don't always experience in sadly everyday life out in the world.
Well, and the practice without pressure name is very literal. It is
Yeah, I
the
love the
the
name. The name is
opportunity
great.
to practice without the pressure or the stigma. When Deb and Mark would go in to a medical procedure, Mark was born with a lot of heart complications, and they would say to her, "How many guys do we need?" Because when they saw him, they immediately judged that they were going to have to hold him
Yeah.
down. And how many people, how many guys does it take to hold him down? When that's the first question you're being asked in a medical
Right.
scenario, imagine what Mark heard
Mm-hmm.
and felt from all of that. And I think that the anxiety of not liking the situation plays out, even if Deb didn't want to. It's impossible not to have that body language in a way that Mark picks up. Is okay, mom is stressed out, and it's my fault. And so to remove that stigma from all parties and be able to do that. But it's like if I want to be great at soccer, I practice.
That's
If
right.
I want to be, people aren't born being the best, piano player in the world, right? They practice again and again, and they work on the parts that they need to feel comfortable. And so with PWP being able to practice the things that are difficult for you, and everyone is different.
Yeah.
Right. Everyone's abilities and needs are going to be completely unique to them.
Yeah.
There was a PWP webinar that was phenomenal the other day. And one question, I love when people get involved and ask questions, because if it makes us go, okay, what's the answer? Were questions that we haven't considered before. But it was somebody saying that when it comes to having a blood draw, they have very difficult to see veins. And so there's somebody who needs to be stuck multiple times before they can get a good clean blood draw. And well, what a nightmare for anyone. Right. But then when you're going through and you're already afraid, and you're maybe you've been held down before, being worried about that restraint and the pain of multiple sticks and everything. And so then the answer was, of course, cater the system to that individual's needs. Right. And when you're doing the practice knowing that it's going to be multiple times, and not practicing for a best case scenario, practice for the worst case scenario, so that, that individual goes in there ready for anything.
Yeah, no, I think that, one of the sad things about restraint, and I say this without shaming families that have experienced this, because I myself have participated in restraint of my daughter, Elle, right? This is kind of a fact of nature of this world, sadly. We're trying to provide an alternative to that. But having participated in that, there's two layers. One is we're creating a trauma that makes it harder to overcome or participate in that particular procedure the next time. So if it's a blood draw or a vaccination, right? Elle's going to remember that the last time we were holding her down as she was kicking or screaming and having a fight or flight response, and it's a trauma. And the next one is going to be more of a trauma because of that. But there's a second layer that's, I think, just as sad, is that we're also taking away that learning opportunity. So like my typically developing son, for example, he also had to learn to get a shot, but he was able to do that in the number of opportunities that were presented to him, and he didn't need to be held down to do that. Elle, at some point, didn't have the opportunity to learn anymore and was just forced to do it. And so it was both a trauma and a loss of a learning experience that she could have become empowered by.
Well, that was negative practice.
Right.
That was reinforcing the bad habit practice, and then teaching her that there was it was not going to be a favorable outcome, and that you were going to be hurt both by the procedure and by the being held down, by being restrained. And so
and sedation, the injection aside, which can be its own trauma, if we're just thinking about the sedation purely, on average, I mean, it depends on the individual, right? Probably less traumatic than restraint, but still robs the individual the opportunity to learn and grow and become practiced at whatever that skill is. I came from teaching music before I came to practice without pressure.
So lots of practice in your life in general, yeah.
Which is kind of a weird career path, right? But that was one of the things that I highlighted when I applied for this job is I understand what practice means. And I was right about that it's very similar to, you mentioned piano earlier, right?
Yeah.
I play the trumpet, and learning to play, fast scales on the trumpet or something is something that came with lots of time, lots of patience, lots of attention, lots of opportunity to do it wrong on the trumpet before doing it right. And it's kind of the same right now as we're going through learning how to get a vaccine injection with Miss Lisa here at the Mac. Yes. And we always say before we come, I want to show the signs to the camera, okay? And I'd love it if you could help me do it. We always say practice. This is ASL for practice, right? Will you show me? We say, oh, yeah, I know. You're nervous because of the camera.
That was an
right
eye
now.
roll. That was
I know. Well, Elle is super excited to be here, and I think also a little nervous to be on camera and mic. But that's okay, too. It's your first time. I know.
I get nervous every time we hit record.
Yeah. It's not this is my first podcast, but not my first YouTube video. So I'm more practiced at this than you are, right?
Is it your first podcast?
Your first podcast. And you listen to podcasts every night before bed. So Elle is super excited because when you all publish this podcast, she's going to get to listen to us when she goes to bed, whenever she wants.
Wow.
She'll go find this episode, right? But anyway, we always say, hey, it's time for practice. And I also love this language, right? We say, hey, is there going to be practice? And you sign yes. Or you say, oh, yeah, like you like to say. Can you give an oh, yeah? Not right now.
No,
maybe later. I know you're not. I don't want to make you perform on cue, but if you want to talk later, we would love to hear you in the mic later. Next. Okay, cool. I love it. Whenever you feel like you want to. We say, is there going to be practice? Oh, yeah. Is there going to be pressure? Oh, no, there's not going to be pressure. And the name really does say it all.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good starting point. Like when I'm talking to families who've never heard of it, we're not starting from zero just because we're using the name, right? They understand at least the kind of 30,000 foot big picture of what we're trying to do. And then we can explain a little more in granular detail how we accomplish that.
Well, that's a really good segue. So tell me, if I make an appointment and I bring my child into the Mac to practice without pressure, what is the experience like? Where do you start?
Okay. So we always start with an intake, and our intake is usually a phone call. And it is always with the caregiver at least, and sometimes also with the individual. The individual is welcome to be in the intake, but not required. And so I did my intake with Miss Lisa when it was time for Elle to start practicing. And basically, our caregivers share. We have a bunch of questions designed to get at the things that we really want to learn about, but we try to hear about what has been the family's experience in the past, or not always family, but caregiver and individual. What is their history with restraint and sedation? What is their history attending or not successfully attending the types of procedures that we're talking about working on? We also like to learn some personal things about the individual. One of my favorite questions to ask in the intake is, what does your member like to do for fun? And that question isn't just like a lighthearted, oh, let's just talk about this so it doesn't feel like we're focusing on the negative. It's actually one of the most important questions we ask in the intake, because after the intake, our next step is a consultation where we meet in person. And a consultation is another name for our first practice session. It's different than a practice session, but it's our first time meeting in person and engaging in the kind of practice we're going to do.
Is that standardized, or is it geared towards a specific? There was a young man that we had actually on the podcast, and the doctor was concerned that he had leukemia, and so he needed to. And I think his blood draw was done. Ethan was done his blood draw right here at the Mac.
Okay,
and he was so proud when he came out of that.
Yeah.
Nobody hold me down.
Yeah,
and it became this like rallying cry.
It's amazing.
So we do a lot of the videos for Practice Without Pressure, and to have I probably tell this story way too often, but to have this little, he was 5 or 6 years old, just encapsulate everything we're trying to show in Nobody hold me down. And it was just, I could make 100 videos and not be as
I know.
powerful as his moment of being able to be in control of his own care and not, they were worried about something incredibly serious. And that blood test needed to be done.
Yeah.
But at the same time, how do we do this without exposing him to that
Right.
restraint? And they were talking about how it impacted the sibling. So his brother was impacted by this, and his brother went through, trauma and was afraid of going to the doctor himself because of what he was watching his brother go through. So it was, it's, and I think you may see this. I think it's really easy to oversimplify and kind of vilify the doctor or the nurse for trying to do but the procedure matters. The procedure is important, and so it's
right. Yeah.
It's traumatic for the doctor and the nurse as well.
We have the doctors in Communicare here in the building at the MAC asking us to help walk them through some of our strategies for taking vitals, even, right? Like the blood pressure cuff is something we practice here in our vitals practice. And they want some tips from us because, they also want to be able to do this better, and they're doing the best they can. I would say our main difference is, and there's a bunch of, I'm oversimplifying, but in general, the medical world is concerned with procedure first, and we're concerned with person first. I'm sure there's plenty of doctors and nurses and medical professionals who are very people first, but their whole model is about getting the procedure done in a certain number of procedures in order to get enough money to keep the clinic open. So it's no one's fault. It's just the structure of the system.
And they've been kicked, they've been hit, they've been bit, they've had negative experiences. And so one of the benefits, or one of the many benefits, is that PWP provides a better, dignified experience for everyone. That's something that is really set up. And I don't know that we talk about it enough, but it makes, I think, just in that same way that Deb would talk about Mark, how many guys do you need when he would come in? If they know that PWP is making it so that he doesn't have to be restrained, then when Mark comes in, they have that memory and that experience. It's practice for them to be better with the next person that has a disability that comes in. And it kind of cures decades of bad forms of practice, right? Like reinforcing the negative, the harmful. And I love that it benefits the caregiver. It benefits the individual. It benefits the medical professional. Across the siblings. This is effort that impacts the entire family tree and beyond. And that's, I don't know a lot of things that are that impactful. And so are that was probably a very long way to form the question, but is when someone's coming in for their initial experience, is that catered to a desired procedure that needs to happen?
Yeah. So, generally, yeah. So generally, So you asked if it was standardized earlier.
Yeah.
It is and it isn't, right? So we have structures in place, like we have, for example, our insult or consultation and then practice sessions. We have certain things that we always do as part of our practice sessions, right? Like, for example, our consultation, where we first meet in person. After we finish with introductions and setting up kind of the basic big picture expectations of everybody's roles and responsibilities, one of the very first things that we'll do when we meet in person is model on the caregiver whatever the procedure is. So if it's a blood draw, during the consultation, our member or individual who's there, we won't practice with them that first time. They'll just be observing in whatever way they can.
And there's an anxiety there, right? And so what's going to happen?
Yeah.
Is this a doctor's visit? Are they going to, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we want to, we want them to see what it's like for a procedure to be done without restraint, because maybe they've never seen that or understood that that's possible, because every time they've experienced it, that's been an important part of it. We also want to make sure one of the most important things we do right off the bat is introduce our stop card. And our stop card is literally a card that says stop on it with a little stop sign, which is one of the ways that individuals can use that to communicate, stop, I need a break. We'll also take any way to communicate that, like the word stop, the sign stop, which Elle likes to use. Yeah, I see you doing it over there. The card for those who like it, or we'll even read obvious body language of flinching or pulling away as stop. And we will always, no matter what, respect that and scoot our chair gently back and take away whatever tools we're doing. and take a minute to just recollect, calm the space, do some breathing. And so these types of strategies that Deb developed as part of the Practice Without Pressure model are somewhat standardized. So I would say like the approach has a structure to it. But the procedure, I honestly think, and I believe I've heard Deb say too, that Practice Without Pressure could probably be done on almost any skill with almost any person. I certainly know for myself, when I get blood draws, I don't mind the poke, but I hate looking at blood. Like, hate it so much I sometimes worry I'm going to faint looking at the blood.
Sure.
And so I just close my eyes or look away and try to think of a song in my head. I used to be a music teacher, right? But I think I could probably benefit from my own Practice Without Pressure to maybe approach directly my own anxiety about seeing blood, right? And that is one of the things that when we're doing a blood draw, we have to make sure that we practice with folks, right? And so actually me as a practice specialist now, I'm getting more used to that. We actually have fake blood that we use in vials, and I know it's fake blood, but we don't tell the individuals we're practicing with this fake blood because we want it to feel as close to the real experience as possible, even though it is not the actual experience. We're there to practice. So I think that probably there's a whole bunch of things that aren't medical or dental procedures that Elle, and I think probably in our family life at home, I'm probably already starting to use some of this consciously and unconsciously, trying new foods at dinner time, right? Even for my son, new foods, right? It's the same kind of thing. Something we got to practice. Is that life or death urgent that we need a blood draw or a vaccination or a dental exam? Not necessarily, but is life richer that we learn to like new foods and stuff? For sure. And I feel like we could probably apply the PWP model or aspects of it to that process as well. So I think that what I have learned, thanks to what Deb built and designed, and then has through several other people been passing along to many others, including myself, has made me not only a stronger practice specialist, but a stronger father, and especially a stronger father to Elle. And
that's amazing.
I know, and I love it. And that was why I applied for this job, and it is true. And I'm happy that that's true.
When you get to be a student of what you do every day, and every day you level up, and your father's skills go up in the process. And so wearing different hats and encountering different challenges. Oh, this worked this way. I'm going to try that at home because, and so you get to be immersed in a way that few can. That's really amazing. The moms...
I should probably, by the way, I'm catching myself saying, "Oh, I'm a better father." I should probably not be the judge of that myself. I should probably let Elle say. Do you feel like we do Practice Without Pressure at home sometimes? Do you think that this is so awkward? Do you think I'm a better father because since I started working at
No pressure. You're not on camera or anything.
Yeah. Oh yes. For those of you in the audio world, Elle is signing yes. So there you go. You heard it here first. Better father, thanks to PWP.
Well,
thanks, Deb. Thanks, Deb.
Talk about a thing, an anxiety point. Aren't we all nervous that we're bad parents?
Yes.
I think we're always comparing ourselves to others, and so anything that gives you better confidence in parenting and in as a caregiver across the board, that's leveling up in and of itself, know, and not because I know for Deb, a big part of fighting against the restraint that Mark was experiencing was that she felt like the worst mom in the world. And here's somebody who's now touched thousands of lives feeling like the worst mother in the world, right? And so it can anybody could feel that way.
I resonated so strongly with that story of Deb's when I first heard it. For those of you who don't know it in a nutshell, it's that Deb, who is Mark's mom, and the founder of PWP, I think about 20 years ago or so, was in a blood draw, I believe it was a blood draw appointment with him. And again, they had to bring all the guys out to hold him down, and he was kicking and screaming. And she just said, "Stop, enough. This is not okay. There has to be a better way." And then she started thinking about it and from a bunch of different resources, building slowly the techniques and strategies of practice without pressure. That in a nutshell is also my story. I started telling it earlier that when Elle was a baby, we would give a little hug when it was time for a shot. And, before you know it, she's 5 birthday. Yeah, you had more birthdays. And then you were 5 years old and kind of a little bit too big to be on my lap, but we'd still get you on my lap and I'd still give you a hug and I'd make sure I held your arms in the hug because I didn't want you to squirm. And I would say, I know you don't like the shot, but it's healthy for you and good for you. And we've got to do it. And then Elle got bigger and bigger and is 15 years old now. And I would say around the time that she was 10 or 11, it required a team of people to hold her down. And in fact, at the time, that felt like the better situation. I remember one of her first COVID vaccines. We went into a CVS where we were all getting our vaccines, and Elle, the person we came to the counter, and the pharmacist at CVS looked a little nervous that an individual with disabilities was coming up, maybe not sure how to handle it. Elle flinched when the needle came out, and then she just looked at me and said, "No, I'm not doing it," and put her arms up and refused and crossed her arms. And I said, "What do you mean? But she needs the COVID vaccine." "No, I'm not doing it." And I said, "But she needs it more than I do because she has a rare genetic condition and we don't know what would happen if she gets sick." And we were really scared at the time. And it was so frustrating that this person just said, "No, I feel unsafe. I'm not willing to do that. I suggest you go to your pediatrician." And so it was 2 weeks later or something. And at the time we were all anxious and nervous as a world. Right. And we waited a couple of weeks and they had to bring in a team of people to hold her down. But we felt so lucky that she got it and that the doctor's office seemed to know exactly how to handle it at the time. That was how I felt about it. I remember really clearly. It had never occurred to me, and it's embarrassing to say, but it's true. And I think maybe lots of other parents who are listening to this might resonate. It hadn't occurred to me until literally I heard of Practice Without Pressure at Morgan's Mac here and applied for this job, that there might be a different way to approach this. And that's what's so powerful about PWP to me, is that it's taking the world, which on every level isn't designed for people with disabilities, and it's taking an important part of that world, and it's actively saying we can change our approach. We can redesign this so that it is more friendly and inclusive for people with disabilities, but really anybody who that model isn't working for, right? And we're doing that with these procedures, but I love how the Mac also as a space is doing this with other structures, like even the architecture of the building and the fact that we're including a salon in the same building as a doctor. Even just that fact. I mean, our first time in this building, Elle got a haircut and had a great time at the salon and loved it. And then we had a snack in the cafe. And every time we come into the building, she wants to go to those two places and stop and say hi. And that made her doctor's appointment easier because the whole thing was framed as a positive experience. She, without even any practice without pressure, she participated in letting the doctor use the otoscope to look in her ear, which when we lived in California, that was never a thing. That was either restraint or we're going to skip that today and hope that everything's fine in her ears.
Yeah, a good friend of mine has a challenge with haircuts. Mm-hmm. And when I talked to him about Practice Without Pressure, he said, we will bundle her hair in the middle of the night and just cut it in a big bunch. Mm-hmm. And that's all we can do. Mm-hmm. And I think they decide that it's, you had decided that restraint was a fact of life. Yeah. And that it was not something that could be challenged. That's right. And there wasn't a pathway. And I think for people with disabilities in general, we commit that crime too often of jumping to the conclusion that the way things are is the best it's going to get, and that
that you can't do this,
right? And that the tools don't exist to challenge that. And that Becky's story, Becky, who was in the last podcast, she talks about how this lady from Delaware popped up all of a sudden, and she's doing what, and they don't have to restrain.
Sounds like Deb.
Yes, and Becky's story especially. Her son has Down syndrome, and then they adopted Luna, who talk about massive heart and opening up your family to care for somebody who needed to be loved, and in a very unique way, and like they're incredible, and that seems to be, I'm going to lump you into this category as well, but just the exceptional people who are looking for solutions, but then also become part of the solution to opening up new people to the benefits of PWP, and I have to give the Mac credit too here. They tried to have thought of everything, but then everywhere here there's a sign that says scan this QR code. If we didn't think of something and you're struggling with it, scan this QR code and give us a suggestion if there's something that we could be doing differently. And that they don't. And I think this entire realm, it's a lot about assumptions. It's assumptions being made about the individual. Oh, they have this disability. They can't do this, and challenging those assumptions. And even here at the Mac, we did our best. But if we missed anything, here's a process, and they spread it everywhere. Here's how you let us know. And I think just taking that extra step to ask and make sure and provide that open space to get that feedback. I don't know that we do that often enough, in other areas. So it's great to see the Mac kind of leading by example in that way.
Yeah. The buzzword around the Mac is inclusion, right? That's it's even, it's our Wi-Fi password in the building. That's how important it is, right? That is what guides every decision that we make here, is that we want to include everybody in what we're doing. And I think PWP plays a really important part in that, because we don't want you just to receive healthcare or receive dental care. We want you to participate in your dental care and your healthcare and help you in micro ways accomplish that. Like maybe you're okay with the needle actually, but you just don't like the sensation of the tourniquet being tight around your arm. Well, we can practice that, not in a way where we're desensitizing you to it or something like that, but in a way where you're actively practicing how to do that and to do something that is at first uncomfortable. Playing a C# major scale in the trumpet is an uncomfortable combination of fingers. And you learn how to do it by slow repetition until it becomes internalized and natural and part of your identity. And I feel like that's where I see like our members when they're ready for the procedure and they graduate. But also, I have to say, now that I'm practicing, it is amazing to me when almost every practice session, there's like a micro breakthrough on something. And that's just as exciting. And I'll try to explain it to someone like when I get home from work or something, like, oh, this person I was working with today, like, I was excited when we put a Band-Aid on today. And it sounds like, oh, great. Okay, cool. Good job at work today. But to me, that was like, wow, I can't believe it.
Oh, yeah.
Like that.
This was
what
a whole
an
sticking
amazing,
point.
huge breakthrough, right? Because that was like for maybe the last 3 or 4 weeks, like the Band-Aid had been a real struggle and like an obvious source of anxiety. And we did it today and we powered through, and to see the pride on the individual's face when they know, like, I chose to participate in something that was hard for me, and I did it, and just the same pride that I feel when I accomplish doing something that was hard for me. But somehow we don't think that putting a Band-Aid on should be hard, and therefore we're not going to help you work on that in the world, right? We've all decided that's just something easy, right? But that's not by definition easy for everybody. Part of what's so fun about in the intake when we get to know people and we ask them, what do you like to do? We learn, oh, you really love Spider-Man, or you really love going on walks, or you really love reading. And whatever that is, we'll try to work that in. I mean, I didn't pull that Spider-Man example out of thin air. We have a member we're working with right now who is super, super into Spider-Man and working on blood draws. This individual is in his early 20s. And we're using this to connect with him. in a really true and authentic way, like just talking about, oh, well, like, did you see like the most recent Marvel movie, even though it wasn't Spider-Man? And did you, what's your favorite Spider-Man movie? But then we're using it in the practice. Like we printed out a picture of the Spider-Man web hand, right? Where it's like the I love you sign, but he's shooting webs. And we put it flat so that he could lay his hand on that in that shape when he's putting his hand out for a blood draw. And he finds a source of power in that, right? He also uses it to communicate his sense of anxiety. He'll raise his hand to his temple and say, my spidey sense is tingling. And I love that because it's so clear, but it's like through the language of Spider-Man. And it's like, but we take it really seriously. Okay, we're like, oh, we hear your spidey sense is tingling, and we're going to help you work on that and work through what that feeling is, not just say, what are you talking about? Spider-Man's not here. Like that's not real. We don't care, right? We're going to meet you where you are, and we're going to help you through whatever you are struggling with in that moment.
In your own way.
Yeah.
And if that way happens to be Spider-Man, we interviewed Stan Lee years ago who created Spider-Man, and he talks about the hero in all of us, and that the allegory of doing the hard thing. And standing, Spider-Man is the greatest example. With great power comes great responsibility.
Absolutely.
And so, what a easy package to teach to a child. And through, what would Spider-Man do? Well, he would do the right thing, even if it was hard. And even, and so, leveraging those heroes and those stories, whatever resonates with you. And I think so many of those, X-Men as a stand-in for the civil rights movement and things like the other, right? And so all of the and I'm sure people in the disability community as well can resonate with that, and where it's you're different, so you're bad. And so I comic books, I've always been a big fan, but just as a tool for setting examples. And
honestly, we try to do that with any individual with whatever they're into. So like I have a 6-year-old girl I'm working with who loves the Trolls movies, right?
Okay.
And that seemed like, oh gosh,
how am I going to know the Trolls
how am I going to connect Trolls,
Yes.
right? But here's the thing. I found pictures of the two main characters from Trolls, Branch and Poppy. And Branch was doing crossed arms because he's a grumpy character.
Yes.
And Poppy was doing jazz hands because she's kind of an extroverted, positive, sunshiny kind of character, right? And I thought this is perfect. And I put them on the wall, and it makes my member, when she comes in, feel really welcome and excited because, look, there's her favorite movie on the wall. But then I say, okay, let's do Branch arms, and she'll cross her arms. And then I say, okay, let's do Poppy arms, and then she does jazz hands. And I use that later in our practice when she's also practicing for a blood draw. And I need her to put her arm with her palm up on her knee. And I'll start by saying, all right, Poppy arms. Great. Now put your bottom arm just on your knee like that. And then we'll go from there. But I'm kind of speaking the language of what she's interested in.
And that must build so much trust.
Yeah. Well, and connection. And I'm saying what you're interested in is important. Elle is super into Chappell Roan, the pop singer. And so just last week at our practice session, Elle had a major breakthrough with doing all the steps of the vaccination, and it was a huge victory. And we celebrated by doing a dance party in the room to Chappell Roan's HOTTOGO, full with all the hand signs. And it was awesome because that's just the practice specialist, Miss Lisa, who's working with her, had never heard of Chappell Roan before, but it came out in the intake that she did with me.
How do you get through life without hearing Hot to Go? I'm shocked. Yeah.
Yesterday? Did we do it again yesterday? We had a practice session yesterday and we played it again. And you loved it. I know. Because it's fun, right? We want our practice sessions to be fun. Not like, oh, I have to go to the doctor. But yay, I get to go to practice. That's I feel like the first step. Everything in life should be fun, right?
Yeah.
Why can't we make going to the doctor fun?
Well, this has been fantastic. Elle, it was great to meet you. I really appreciate you letting us share your stories today.
Elbow bumps.
Elbows.
Elle loves
elbows.
Yeah. And Elle was doing elbows before COVID.
Elle's elbows.
Yeah,
There we
Elle's
go.
elbows.
Yeah, before everybody started to copy you during COVID, for sure.
Yeah, right?
And
Elbows.
just speaking for myself, but I know for Deb as well, just thank you for everything that you're doing here at the Mac. And we're always so blown away by how many people, and I tell Deb this all the time because I don't know that she, she was just a frustrated mom.
Yeah.
And so much good came of that.
I love that.
But she, through Practice Without Pressure, has been able to impact so many lives. And it's not in a small way. Mm-hmm. We're talking about a real lifeline that was like a wish on a genie's lamp. What is your heart's desire? It's to not have to restrain my son or my daughter, and to not have to put them through that.
This is very popular at the Mac. We have a very long waiting list. Unfortunately, folks have to wait like 6 months to get our services right now because it's so popular. But this is poised to spread over the country.
Yeah.
I seriously, I feel like if this can become a Medicaid reimbursed procedure, which I know we're working on in Texas and hopefully other states too. I think Delaware might be working on, or maybe has worked on something like that. This is poised to spread like wildfire. This is, parents in my position are hungry for this. It's clear with the parents I work with at the Mac. It's clear from our long waiting list. It's clear that like literally I pretty much knew the phrase practice without pressure and was excited enough to apply for this job because of that, because it was so obviously something needed, right? Yeah. So thank you to Deb, who I know must listen to this podcast. I think you're a fan. Hopefully you're a subscriber. Deb, like and subscribe.
Yes.
And thank you for taking your frustrated mom energy, which I resonate with so strongly, and doing something so profoundly positive with that.
That's as good a place to stop as any. Thank you both so much. And thank you for joining us on the Power to You podcast.